Hey everybody, I've had a few people reach out. I've mentioned in a couple of videos that this year I've been in business for 25 years. Good handful of people, suggested doing a video explaining how I got started. So I'm going to do a video on the 25 years being in business. How I started was I worked for a modular home company. We did modular homes and mobile homes. How I got into the landscaping is they were having a hard time getting the landscaping done at the end of the job, which would hold up a lot of money. It would hold up a closing. So I started doing this in 1997. I bought a Bollins. I bought a Bollins 4-wheel drive tractor. Completely redid it. I had to rebuild the motor. It was an Isiki diesel. Didn't end up working out real well for me. I had a lot of issues with axles breaking, and I wasn't abusing it. Just mowing with it. It had something Bollins put together with. You could buy the same tractor with a gas motor on it. Mine was a Isiki 3-cylinder diesel, and it just didn't like the power the diesel had. And it also had, I believe, like a 5-foot mowing deck on it. So I didn't keep that long, but I started doing some mowing, and I basically dragged a piece of fence around or whatever I had to do to smooth lots out. But it didn't take me long before I figured out I had to buy a real tractor. So I bought a 1985 Kubota B8200 4-wheel drive tractor with a bucket. The day I bought it, I made a deal. I bought it from East Elliott Garage, which now is MB Tractor in Elliott, Maine. I made a deal on a Kuhn rototiller because back then, for whatever reason, I had a lot of people asking me to do rototill gardens. I also did a lot of rototilling when I did someone's lawn. So that made me a lot of money. First 4 or 5 years that I had that tractor, it was crazy. But I started doing it on the side in 97. By 99, I was enjoying doing that more than I was working for somebody. And I left there pretty much on good terms, I'm going to say. The owner of the company was awesome. I had worked for him originally when I was 15 years old. I was doing some mechanical stuff for him on his trucks, and I actually painted. I painted one of his company trucks when I was basically 16 years old, and I worked there on and off for like 7.5 years. And one of my better friends from high school still works there today. Same thing. He started there when he was 15, and he's still there. He started doing modular homes, mobile homes. He's a very, very good carpenter. What happened with me is the other job I had, I got done and I was doing whatever it took on the side. I did a lot of garage work in 97, 98. It was just a hard gig because you got to rent a shop. But I started doing stuff in his shop for him at night and weekends, whatever I had to. But as time went on, I decided that garage thing wasn't for me. So he asked me the kid that worked there pretty much told him, hey, Shannon's he'll handle whatever gets put in front of him. So I basically got into a cube van. For 7.5 years, I basically went and fixed all the punch list on new homes. I was certified for quite a few years. I could do modular homes, mobile homes, like literally where we had the crane set them and everything. So I did that on and off, like I said, for 7.5 years for him. But that's how I got involved with the landscaping. So 99, it was going good enough, so I said I dove in a little bit deeper, and it went well. I wrote some notes because I kind of want to make sure I touch on certain things. The Bollins tractor I had was I believe it was a TX 1500 or G152 or whatever they called it back then. But I did part-time landscaping and home and property maintenance. I did a lot of mowing, redid raised beds, bark mulch, whatever it took to make the ball go. 99, I had fixed up I believe it was a 78 F350 2-wheel drive. It was a nice truck. I found it on a farm. It's another thing I've also done through this whole business. I've bought and sold a lot of vehicles. I've been pretty good at restoring vehicles since I was very young. Painted my first car when I was 15. and it came out pretty good. I went to work for a body shop when I basically before I was 16. That was a friend of my brother-in-law's. Got very good experience from that guy. We were doing what I call high-end restoration work. Now that shop's still in business all these years later, but he does pretty much insurance work because that's where the money's at. But back then we completely dismantled cars. So that's how I learned the mechanical end and got my daughter's gonna fit pictures into this video as it goes on of trucks that I've had over the years. Some of them are old trucks, but all my equipment always looked good. I took that 78 F350, restored it so it literally looked like a brand new truck, had it leaded up, and that's what I ran for quite a few years. And I wish I still had it. You just can't run your business like that anymore. The problem I started having with that is back in 78, the GVW on that was only, I think, 8,800 pounds. So you go to anybody that had a scale house, they would only put about 1.5 yards of material on it. Also, you'd get pulled over. Like pretty much if the DOT see you, they'd pull you over just because they knew the GVW. And that's why you don't see those old trucks anymore unless they're farm use with farm plates. They started cracking down on it, and it was sad because the truck, when I stopped using that truck, I got it off a farm. I can't remember what the miles, but when I got rid of it, it only had 37,000 miles on it. But anyways, that's one of the things we started with. I had the B8200 Kubota. I went along, like I said, I did everything from paint houses. Another thing that helped me out is I had a couple of I worked for an attorney that had a bunch of rental properties. I went and did a landscape job for him. I did a retaining wall. Somehow we found out through, I believe it was another thing that got me going was a local hardware store knew me well from that company I worked for. So he gave my name out to people in his town, and it really did. I give him credit on my business getting going because it's a town away from me now where I live, and but I did a lot of work down there for a lot of years. I still go down there once in a while. This is another business too. I'm going to tell people, like, I lucked out when I started out, and me and my wife call it, like, people go through a midlife crisis, and some guys go buy a Corvette, they go buy a camp on the lake or whatever. Some people have a home or a camp on the lake already, and their midlife crisis is having someone like me come in and give it a major facelift because they think, at the time, they think that's what they want. So you revamp someone's complete house, and I did a lot of that. And that's another reason I don't want to say cocky, but it made me a little more comfortable about spending money. I really have never spent big money. When I buy equipment, I normally put better than half down of what the thing cost. I saved the money, or I have another piece of equipment that gets traded in that's nothing's owed on, that gives that chunk of money. The B8200 I ended up trading in for I bought a brand new B21, which is a tractor load backhoe. That's the smallest of the series that Kubota still sells. Now it's a B26. But I bought that B21 with the backhoe on it in 2002. And after that thing, I still feel that's probably the best piece of equipment I have ever owned. And that's another thing people aren't going to like in this video. Everybody's like, oh, you got to get an excavator and a skid steer. I don't have a backhoe right now, and I'm missing it. And the economy's not doing real strong in this part of New Hampshire right now, and I don't think it's going to for a couple of years. What's going on in the country right now, it's got people afraid of spending. I will have another backhoe. There's times when I can go, if I'm going to plant a couple trees, a backhoe is better than an excavator because you can clean up your mess better if you got to bring stuff from the truck or the roadside into the job. The problem I have with an excavator, most of the time you got to bring an excavator, and I go home and grab the BX to bring with me to do the cleanup with. So the B21 I bought brand new in 02, and back then I believe it was like $32,000. I took a 5-year loan on it. I think it was like 1.9% because that's considered a commercial thing, so they couldn't do 0 or whatever. I can't remember I remember it a little bit. Another thing I do, I get aggressive on paying my equipment off, which a lot of people may not, but that B21 I had paid for in 24 months because my attitude was it wasn't making me money until I owned it. And that's another thing, people looking at these videos from me, Equipment, when you got a loan on it, don't feel like you're making money with it until you own it. That's when you're making money with it. But in 99 to 04, I did a lot. I painted a lot of houses. That's something that hardware store told somebody one day, hey, I think this guy, he's pretty good at what he does. He did punch lists for a company doing modular homes. I'm quite sure he's capable of painting a house. I painted one house in that town, and it was an old, I want to say 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s house. I painted that house, which I can't remember the price, but I remember back then the price I gave, I couldn't believe they didn't squawk. They just said do it, and it was major money for me at the time. And that summer, I ended up painting 5 more houses on that actual same road. And over the next 4 or 5 years, I painted a lot of houses because people see the houses I did and were pretty impressed with what I did. And like I said, when I was there, I would redo, like when I scraped the house, I'd clean up the gardens that were at, against the rock wall, the rock foundation of the house. I'd clean those up, cut a nice edge in the turf, put 3/4 stone in. So again, even though I was painting the house, I was still doing landscaping. And I found over the years, I liked doing the landscaping more than anything else. I also I was doing so much maintenance on houses though, not just landscaping, that I had a van at the time. I drove that van until it had 285,000 on it, and it started acting up. And then that's kind of when I stepped away from doing a lot of the maintenance. When that died on me. I was diving in deeper to the landscaping. So in 06, I bought a 2004 F-250 Super Duty, and to have a newer plow truck, because I had started getting into doing a little bit of plowing, a little bit of commercial plowing, mostly residential, but I needed something more dependable. So I bought that 04. I can still consider that my best truck I ever bought. That truck, I just, put it bluntly, I had an easy dumper in it. I abused that truck the whole time I owned it. It never failed me, I don't think ever. So it's still on the road today. There's a guy a town away from me that I don't know what he's done to keep it on the road, but when I'm done with a truck, that I've kept that many years, it's normally, as far as I'm concerned, it was done, but someone else felt it was worth throwing the money at, I guess. I don't know, because it's still on the road. 04, 06, I was doing everything. Like I had a couple realtors that would tell people, hey, you're gonna sell your house, call Shannon, have them come in and give it a facelift. So what I did back then is a realtor would have this homeowner call me, I'd go out and I would say I would give them like 3 prices on how, I'm not sure what they wanted to spend. So I would go tell someone, hey, $2,500, I can just come in and give it a quick facelift, redo the bark mulch, whatever. Other times they'd want like major stuff done, like, oh, let's put new deck boards on the decks, make sure the handrails are all tight. Basically, when real estates were telling people, have this guy do it, and he'll fix anything that a home inspector is going to have an issue with on the exterior of your house. So that again, I would paint, redo decks, sometimes power wash decks, power wash houses. Another thing I did when I first started out, I did a lot of power washing, and there was good money in it. Back then, that's something with the modular home company I worked for. The manager that was there that knew me pretty well, had known me for quite a few years, called me up one day and said, hey, we delivered some homes in the winter that are kind of dirty. Are you interested in going to power? And that's, I don't want to say that's how I got in it because I was doing it, but that drove me in deep. But some of the stuff they did was modular homes on private property. Other ones, they'd put a mobile home in a mobile home park. So I would go out on a, weekday to power wash one house while I was in that park or campground. A lot of these mobile homes now go in campgrounds in this area. And I'd go there thinking I was doing one house, and I would get asked to do 6 more while I was there. I would basically make a serious chunk of change power washing houses. So I never really advertised that. It was just when people see you, they would have you do theirs. Weeks later, I'd get a call. I'd wait till I got 4 or 5 more lined up in that park, and I'd go back and do them. North of me, around like Wolfboro, there was they're campgrounds, but I say trailer parks because they're not campers. They're actually mobile homes, single wide mobile homes they put in for camps. But every time, I don't think I ever went to do a power wash where I didn't get 4 or 5 more to do that same day while I was there, because if people were up at the camps, they'd come over and say, hey, can you do mine while you're here? It got to the point where I'd have to bring gallons of product extra with me knowing that was going to happen. And when I was doing that, when I first started doing that, I actually had a 70, I think it was a 78 F-250 pickup that I did that in. I ran the crap out of that thing. Matter of fact, I started going to Conway, which is a good, the other side of Conway, sometimes further. And I was getting pretty far away from home in that old truck, is how I felt back then, but it was good money. The camps, there's so many camps around me. All these lakes around me have houses. A lot of these lakes were kind of started in the early 50s. So you got a 1950 to 1955, 1960 camp. Real estates would sell that to somebody. They would get a hold of Shannon if you need some work, done. Because they'd ask them, hey, we're going to buy it, but it needs this, this, and this. Back when I first started, real estates would just say, hey, we're going to adjust the price. We don't want to do it. The homeowner would say, I don't want to fix it. I'll discount it, and people would buy it. I would fix it for the new owner. And what ended up happening over the years is I would level homes up. I would lift camps, sometimes 6 or 8 inches, put better blocking, sauna tubes, whatever it took. So I didn't say no to much. So even though I'm Alden's Landscaping, when I first started, it was Alden Services, which was wood landscaping, property maintenance, whatever. That puts you into like the 06 era. I started lifting camps, leveling them. People would ask me, hey, can you build us a shed? I'd build a shed. I'd build all the way up to like a 12 or 14 foot gazebo for somebody. That took off. I had 3 or 4 years where I could have made a living just doing gazebos and picnic tables, grape arbors, stuff like that. Same thing, you do a gazebo on a road and people like how it looked, and someone would always stop and ask that guy, hey, who did that? And I'd get another one, like 5 or 10 houses up the road. It's kind of funny how that works. I'm in an area of New Hampshire where word of mouth, you do good work, you find work. I didn't even advertise. Like, I lettered my trucks because my insurance company told me to letter my trucks. I probably only had, I lettered my first dump truck because it was a thing, I'm getting in business, I got to do this. Then after that, as long as I stayed busy, when I painted the truck, I didn't normally worry about lettering it. You'll see in the pictures that my daughter's going to put into this video somehow. I had an old, I think it was 76, 77 F600 that's lettered up. My van, I lettered up because that did give me a lot of work doing the maintenance and mobile home stuff. I'm also in an area too where a lot of carpenters up here, for whatever reason, wouldn't touch a mobile home, and I would go in and do a mobile home. I'd block and re-level a mobile home for somebody, end up getting other work out of them. So I want to, again, I'm going to say it, I always say it, I didn't say no to much, I still really don't. April 2nd in 2006, I had my house burned, which kind of kicked me back, a step, to put it bluntly. Pretty much lost it. The original house that was here was an older camp. I'm going to say 60s, early 70s. I'm going to say the house was the 60s. It was like a mobile home with additions off me to camp that I got, and that burnt. I lost everything. I had a separate garage, so my equipment for my business was in that garage. I bought a brand new, in 05, I bought a 990 John Deere 4-wheel drive tractor with a bucket and stuff on it. That was close enough to the house so the stickers burned off the hood, and I think one of the headlights got messed up. And it wasn't, just to add a little bit to the story, that wasn't covered because my homeowners, my equipment was only covered if it was off my property, which I thought was kind of weird. I basically took a few months off during that period to get a new home put up here. And it was amazing, like the other contractors in town that gave me their time, like an electrician that I used to do some, I'd dig ditches for his power line when he was putting new power to a home or a camp. So I knew him pretty well. He came out and did all the wiring. We did a power pole, did that all for free for me, which I thought was kind of cool. I needed some gravel at the time. Another company in town backed in one day with a tri-axle and dumped 3 or 4 loads of gravel because he heard I needed it. I did the concrete work myself, all that. But anyways, so we got that behind us. It was a kick in the butt, to put it bluntly. I mean, it was hard get a good mood going. But it took me about 6 months. And people in this town that I live in were pretty good. There was a house for sale in town. It was one of my kids' school teachers gave me that house to use for about the 3 months. It took me 2 to 3 months to get back in a home here. And during that time that was for sale, she let us stay there for free, which I thought was kind of cool. '06 to '08, the collapse happened. Basically, the economy went to crap up here. People were losing their homes. The weird part about that is I was working for those attorneys because they had a lot of rental properties. I found over the years attorneys own a lot of rental properties, and that attorney talked to a couple other attorneys that had rental properties. So I stayed busy with them revamping their everything from landscape to redoing staircases, retaining walls, whatever it took. The rentals did somewhat good through that era because a lot of people that lost their homes would go rent. But I was blessed enough to have a handful of attorneys that I was working for. I also had some investment guys that were buying up some of the camps and having me, they got my name through somebody, I think a realtor or whatever. But I would go to I was going around the lakes around me and shutting down these camps, winterizing them, until the market turned around. Basically, they had the money to buy some of these when they were cheap. And I was lucky enough to work for some of those guys. I had a handful of customers that weren't affected by the collapse. They had enough money, so they had bought some of these camps while they were cheap, and I ended up doing like full renovations on some camps. I had one guy, I did everything. We redid the complete landscape. I mean, major. Probably took me 4 years to do all the landscape, repaint this camp, rebuild the garage because it was rotted walls, retaining walls, a new walkway to the lake so that he could get down there easier. So I lucked out through the collapse. I had a handful of people. I had one of my customers, I'm going to explain, a customer can make you or break you. I had an older gentleman in his 80s, had not rich, but he had a little bit of money. And his attitude was, I went there to do a couple small things. Basically, he had bought skids of rock that had set in his yard, probably, not an exaggeration, I think he told me they were sitting in his yard for 12 or 15 years. Got my name through the hardware store I'm talking about. Had me go look at it. I did this retaining wall for him. After that, he said, hey, are you interested in doing some paint work on the house? He had a painter that he hired that didn't finish the job, so I had finished that job, a lot of rotted wood. It was a high-end farmhouse from probably like the early 1900s, had a lot of fancy scroll work, wanted it different colors. So I redid his farmer's porch, re-leveled his farmer's porch. Part of the house back in the day was a chicken coop, and that was now part of his living room. The guy that redid that didn't fix all the rotted wood that was underneath in the barn floor, so I ended up getting... I was on that job on and off probably for 5 years, 4 or 5 years anyways. He was just a gentleman. It's like, that was a time I was slow other than working for him. I had jobs coming in, but I wouldn't say I was busy. But he gave me a lot of work. I mean, he decided he wanted a roof put off the barn so that he could put his camper in it. Says, you think you can handle that? I'm like, yeah, I did that. Good story. That's another story I'm going to tell you that's kind of cool with the business. You get customers that are just fun to work for. You also get customers that you'll never work for again and wish you never worked for. But he was a guy that was, whatever reason, he didn't want to, he said, I basically want to spend my money before I pass away. And he said, if you don't take it, I'm going to give it to another contractor, because I'm like, you don't really need to do this. One of the jobs he did, he had even back then, he had I'm going to say $14,000, $15,000 hot top driveway put in. The guy that did the hot top driveway didn't pitch it right, and he had it, that summer that I worked for him, he had that driveway done. That winter, the water ran towards the detached garage so bad that the ice backed up and bent both his aluminum garage doors. Hated it. He came out of his barn because he kept his car parked in one of the barns. And when you walk out of the barn, it had a pretty good granite wall made where they had a ramp so you could get in there. It was basically a horse and buggy barn originally. But he had his car in there. He came out of there and fell, broke his hip. He called me up the following that spring after winter and said, I want this hot top driveway ripped out and I want a gray or blue stone driveway put in. I thought he was messing with me. And I went over there that summer. Not only did I rip that brand new hot top out, put a gray stone driveway in for him, he had me put a small pond in the middle of the circular driveway, which meant I did a circle rock wall all the way around the center of this to make it look better. He also got it in his head he wanted it to look more era correct to the house, so he hated the hot top. But the guy that did the hot top driveway pulled in one day screaming at me because I was ripping it up. Again, I had to sit down with him and his wife and said, I think it's crazy to do this. And his wife pretty much said, he's going to have you do it. And if you don't do it, he's going to have someone else do it. So we like your work. Will you please do it? So I did it. So you'll have customers that help you out, get your business going. And I mean, till the day I would stop, if I drove by that guy's house, I would stop in and have a sit down with him 15, 20 minutes, even years after I stopped doing the work for him. Just a nice gentleman. Same thing. He'd always ask me, you busy? If you're not busy, I'll find. It's like, no. So you have good customers, bad customers. 2014, around that era, I started doing property management. I was watching, basically some of these camps were getting torn down, monstrosity of camps were getting built, and I would do the complete landscape on it. They'd get friendly with me, and they'd say, hey, we live in Connecticut. When our alarm goes off, we don't know what to do. Will you set us up to where you go do periodic checks on the camp? If the alarm goes off, will you go out and check it? You know, and a lot of times, like I'd meet a sheriff out there or whatever, because some of these are like pretty out there on Class 6 roads. So that became a big part of my business. And at the time, it was good money. I thought it was kind of a good thing. When I got rid of it, I just woke up one day and said, I've had enough. I mean, I was doing everything from watching over people's camps, houses. I was keeping care of 24-unit elderly housing. And when I say keeping care of it, I mean everything from evicting people, moving them in, landscape, painting the apartments, complete management of these properties. One of them was a 24-unit elderly housing. When I decided to walk away from that, I didn't realize that it was such a good feeling. After that point, I'd say I got done with that. 2021, I stopped doing that completely. I just called up all the customers I had. They weren't happy. I had like people were sending me gifts and everything else. I'm like, to try to get me to stay on. Guys like me aren't easy to find. Most landscapers are landscapers, and that's all they want to do. Most builders are builders, and that's all they want to do. So it's hard to find one guy. There was times I would they would hire me to hire a carpenter or an electrician to go do stuff, but they wanted me to be the head of the project. And so they didn't have to worry about it. And I made a lot of money over the years doing that. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. I found, that's something I'm going to say to other landscape companies. I look back now, I got involved with a lot of work where I would hire somebody when something went wrong. Even 2 years later, that homeowner was calling me. And that's when I realized that's a dangerous game to play. Overall, over the years of business, I did it. And I made out financially with it. Got a lot of headaches from it. I won't do it anymore. I won't subcontract anybody for nothing anymore. If I can't handle it, I don't want to do it. The only two people I'll bring in on a job is a plumber and an electrician. Other than that, I have no interest in hiring builders anymore, concrete guys, whatever. The homeowner has to do that at this point. So 21 to 24, where we're at now, I'm pretty much only doing small excavation and landscape work. Some of the jobs I've taken the last 3 to 4 years, I think are probably a stretch to the size company I got, but people, same thing. They're like, no, we heard you're good. We want you to do it. And I do it. And at the end, it's always good. They're happy. I'm happy. It's pretty good money for my company. I don't have really overhead to this business. It's pretty much just me. My daughter helps me out when I need help. My wife pretty much got done doing what she was doing. she enjoys going out and doing the flower and the things. Like you'll see videos that are coming up. I go do a lot of planters for people in the spring. I have a couple storefronts that I do. Basically, redo the gardens, raise beds, whatever it takes. Redo the bark mulch, stripe the parking lot. I'm going to say there was plenty of ups and downs to the 25 years of business. You have customers over the years though that like, first time in 25 years, 2 years ago, I had a customer for the first time that wouldn't pay me in full. And I didn't chase it because it wasn't a substantial amount of money. I went back 2 or 3 times to try to make them happy. I think what that case was another one where it was a midlife crisis thing where someone they lived there 20-something years, the house and yard looked like crap. They had me do a major revamp. And when I say major revamp, I did better than 1,000 feet of rock wall. Some of it was 5 feet tall. A lot of erosion stone because it was a steep. The driveway itself, I want to say, was 1,100 and something feet, and it was a climb to the top where the house was. I got rid of a lot of water issues. I gave them, it was a pretty substantial job. I won't say numbers. They agreed to it. What happened that made them unhappy is that the wife just kept adding. Like this guy had a job where he was gone for weeks at a time. And his wife would come home, I'd be leaving, she'd come home and say, hey, I like this, but can we add this? And what I would do is smart, and another thing I'm going to tell you, people in business, in this landscape business, you give a job, and this one here had a pretty good blueprint of what I had to do, what I was going to use for products. Every week, there was weeks that so much would get added, I would do up another bill and have either one of the two sign it. And at the end of this job, the overtures, that's where the problem came in. So at the end of it, I got a check for all but a few thousand of this whole job, which was a substantial job. I would go there sometimes 3 weeks at a time, then I'd have to go do other jobs and I'd leave for a week. But overall, I was married to this place for that summer. Matter of fact, early spring and late into the fall before we got it done. But again, they just kept adding. Originally they wanted to do the grass, and we want you to do loom and grass, hydroseed it, whatever you're gonna do. Some of it we ended up, I believe we did some turf. Some of it was seeded. The rock walls had beds in them, but that was the first time in 25 years that I did a job, and at the end of it, there was an issue. Not that that was the first time that issues happened, but normally you could smooth things out and do a little extra. They'd make these people happy. This guy here, I left, they weren't happy. It was still substantial. I was happy because I had collected enough on it and it was a big enough job, so I didn't mind. But I did go back. I went back 3 times and tried doing extras to smooth this out because I don't like leaving stuff like that. And that's another thing. I broke my back sometimes trying to make customers happy that you just couldn't make happy. Financially happy maybe, but like there's just some people, I don't care what you do, they want more. I try to give people a big bang for their buck. And when they're not happy with me, they've got issues, as far as I'm concerned. And I'll have, in 25 years of business, I've probably had 3 or 4 people that I think just because they felt, the reality is they got in over their head financially because they just kept adding and adding and adding, and you bill them and bill them and bill them, and at the end of it, they're like, wow, we weren't expecting that. Well, then you lay it out. That big thing I'm going to tell people that are watching me to learn things on how to run a landscape business. Any overtures on a job, you got to make good notes. I would literally go home and do up another bill and have them sign that bill. And if I wouldn't have, I probably wouldn't have got what I got out of these people. I think they were nervous about not paying me all but a few grand because they knew I had good paperwork. And they had to admit, well, wow, I didn't know while I was gone those 2 weeks you had you add all this. And everything I did, it wasn't major. Every change that woman made was a $2,500 to $5,000 change. So it didn't take long to add up. So that you have customers like that. I've also had customers, I had a customer for quite a few years. I used to do a spring cleanup, fall cleanup. They had to have what do we call in New Hampshire, a raised septic system in, because the house was down near the lake, and they had to pump it up twice to get it to a leach field. Well, I went in with a logging company, we logged it and got it to where someone could put a better septic system in. The guy put the septic system in, it looked like a bomb went off. So I got a good job from it, did that for him originally. Over the years, we kept doing, they'd have us put an arbor above a walkway, redo a rock wall, because there was a lot of rock wall work at this. This was a place that was put in the 80s. And again, the house was down here, the lake was down here, the top of their driveway was up here. So we just we dressed it, made it look better. They decided one day they weren't going to come up. They were getting older. But I want to tell you how customers feel about you. They called me up and said, hey, we're getting ready to put it on the market. Can you come over and give it a pretty good facelift for us? And I went over. We gave it a pretty good landscape facelift. I redid a rock wall around one of the leach field was a raised leach field. So I talked them into putting a rock wall around it to make it look better. And the driveway would go up to that rock wall. It would just, the real estate even said, give it, there was a lot on the market at the time. So they said, you got to make yours look better than everybody else's, basically. There was a lot around them for sale. So they had to make theirs look better than all the other ones because they were all priced about the same. So I gave them a price. Same thing like I said earlier in the video. You give someone a price saying, I can do this, this, or this. It's up to you what you want to spend. He chose to spend a bigger amount, and it was awesome for me. They were very happy with what I did. The house was on the market for 3 weeks and sold. I get a letter in the mail about 2 weeks after that with a thank you note. Even the realtor felt what I did to that house was why it sold. They gave me another $1,000. They sent a check with that note thanking me. And they said if they ever decide to come back up to this area, they're from Boston. They had a very nice place in Boston. So I think they started traveling a little bit more instead of coming to a camp. They started getting on an airplane, and that's what they were doing for enjoyment. But that's a customer, like I said, that's my experience with most of my customers over the years. And every time a real estate's asked someone, say, call this guy and see what he says, most of the time when I revamp someone's house, it sells fairly quick. That's a big secret too. Like that, if I had to do it again and I was younger, I would actually advertise that. I would go see more realtors that would say this to people. Hey, if you want to sell your house, have this guy come peek at it. Someone that's watching my video right now that wants to sell their house, that's another thing. But like I said, don't be afraid to suggest to people, hey, we can do this while you're there. I upsell jobs all the time. Like I get hired sometimes to go revamp, like re-gravel someone's driveway, grade it out, maybe because there was a water issue or whatever. While I'm there, they like your work. You see something else there. Most people, unless you're telling them something that's going to cost 25 grand, they'll jump on it. If you say, hey, I think I can make this look a lot better, it's something you want to think about, you want me to give you a price. And that's another thing that got my business going. And don't say no to much. I mean, even though you're a landscape company, you go to someone's house and they want you to power wash their deck because there's good money in it. A young guy that's starting out, if you found out what you would get paid for doing some of this other work and you felt you were capable of doing it and doing it right, that's a good way to get your business rolling. Even though you want to be a landscaper, there's other things you can do to get the ball rolling, and that's what I did. What got me where I'm at now. And I don't want people thinking because I did this video, I'm not a rich guy. I've made a good living at it. I've worked hard to make a good living though. And I'm at the point now where I can pick and choose a little bit what I do. Right now, I think we're heading into an economy that's going to be pretty slow, but I don't think it's going to affect me too much. Might have a few more days I can get on the boat this year, next year. I don't know how, the best way to say it, I got a kind of ill feeling in my stomach of what's going to go on in this country in the next 24 months. And no matter what side you're on, I don't think we're going to have a little bit of a hiccup here. That's how I'm going to put it. Basically, I feel very blessed to be where I'm at now. But I also put a lot of hard work in to get where I'm at. And I think a lot of the younger guys starting out now, I can tell in my town, I can tell the guys I think that are going to make it work. I think some other guys are going to get in trouble in the next 24 months and during this slowdown because they just got crazy buying equipment. I've got a couple of them that started out in the last 5 or 6 years that will actually ask me questions. I've had a couple of them call me and say, "Hey, do you mind?" You know, they actually asked me how I would price something out because it was something I used to do and I just so decided not to do it. I also don't like suggesting people like, "Hey, I'm getting done this today, but call this guy and he'll probably take it over." This was just a guy that happened to go there, called me up. He knew I had done that. It was basically a commercial job that I didn't want to do anymore. So he called me up and I told him how to bid it, and he ended up getting it. He's pretty happy. But like I said, my big saying behind me on the wall, I don't know if it shows in the camera, but there's enough sunshine for everybody. I really do feel that way. Any business up here, carpentry, concrete work, landscape, you do good work, you're going to stay in business up here. I got out of doing the mowing end of it. I do a little bit now, but it's my commercial stuff just to keep I have to do the year round to keep the contract. And that's nothing. If I was starting out again, like right now, if I was starting a new company, you can make a good living where I'm at. Because of the lakefront, people come up to the camps want to enjoy it, not mow their grass. You could make a very good living just mowing grass, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper to get in that end of the landscape business than it is the construction end. What happened with me when I started out, I was doing everything. I did a lot of mowing, a lot of residential mowing while you were there. Same thing. People would say, "Hey, do you think you can put a French drain in?" Yeah. And it progressed into where I'm at now. And now I'm 55 years old, so I don't really want to do all the shoveling and raking. I also don't want to just sit in a machine all day because that's boring. But I'm to the end of it now, where the side of the business, landscape business, where I'm doing the construction end of it, like retaining walls, stuff like that. Again, I'm not going to be afraid to, if I'm, once in a while, another thing that will happen in landscape business, someone will call up and decide, "Hey, someone in our family's getting married. We have a big farmhouse up in New England. We're thinking we want to have the wedding there, but it hasn't been mowed for 20 years. Can you go up and give it a facelift?" And again, that ends up being a big job. They're willing to pay good money to have a wedding at that thing, to fix that barn up, to make it look, and I've done that. I've mowed 5 acre fields, like manicured them, so for a wedding for that family, and they're willing to pay good money for you to go do that. And it ain't easy. You go grab a farm property that hasn't been mowed for 20 years. It's like, to get that looking good again, it ain't easy. So like I said, I'm blessed to be where I'm at. I just thought I'd do a video, and my daughter's going to put the pictures in. She might write a few things in to explain a little bit more, but I just thought I'd do a quick thing, where we came from, where the business started, and where I'm at now. And again, thanks for watching.